Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast as we are continuing to talk about NFL training camps as they have kicked off across the league for all 32 teams. We just discussed that CeeDee Lamb did not fly out with the Dallas Cowboys to join them for their training camp, but he is not alone in terms of players that are looking to hold out. Earlier this week, we talked about Jordan Love, the Green Bay Packers quarterback. He is planning on holding out of training camp as well. I think that the latest reporting is that he's technically holding in, that he will be around the team, but is not planning on being a full participant in camp just yet. Last offseason, he signed a one-year contract extension that was worth $13.5 million with a lot of incentives built into the deal. Ended up being a very team-friendly contract, and for that reason, the Packers are going to benefit from having a quarterback that is at the caliber of Jordan Love on a less expensive deal than somebody who, especially coming off of last season, would have been entering a free agency this year and would have been much more expensive to pay. Now Love feels like it is his time to get that big contract, and with an offseason that has been filled with praise for Jordan Love for the development that we saw from him over the course of the season and his ability to lead the Packers to the NFC divisional round and very easily could have been in that conference championship. I feel like Love has every right to sort of put his foot down and try and get himself a new deal. The Packers organization and their front office does seem to be optimistic that a deal will get worked out here. They seem to be supporting him as well. So I feel pretty confident that Love will be able to get a new contract this offseason. I cannot say the same, though, for Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, where just this morning we got an update from Cameron Wolfe of NFL Network that Tua is going to be at training camp. He won't be a full participant during these contract negotiations. He's going to be going through individual drills and some 7-on-7s to help develop a rapport with his wide receivers for him to stay fresh as well. But he will not be going through any types of contact drills or 11-on-11s as he is trying to, I believe that the sentiment is that he wants to make sure that he is completely healthy and that nothing were to go wrong for him in what is going to be a crucial contract year for Tua, because where the negotiations have been so far, he is hoping to reach that Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff number of $50 million a year annually, and the Dolphins don't necessarily view him in that same light. I do tend to sort of side with the Dolphins a little bit on this one. I think that playing this out could be the way to go. So ultimately, we'll see how this all plays out for Tua, but just know that it is a little bit of a hold-in situation, but again, still doing some limited participation, and I can't imagine that this holdout goes into the regular season, but we will have to keep you all updated on that one. Another player that we've talked about at length before here, Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. He did end up reporting to training camp yesterday. Seems like it's going to be a similar type of hold-in situation. I'm assuming that we are going to get some more details on all of that as things come out. I think the 49ers just kicked off their training camp yesterday as well, so we'll see what level of participation Ayuk plays with, because he just last week formally requested a trade after an offseason full of him hinting at the idea that he is sort of fed up with the organization's negotiation tactics and that he's been not so quietly hinting that he wants out. A lot of love for Jaden Daniels. And it's not just love for Jaden Daniels, who was just drafted second overall by the Washington Commanders this past year. You can show love and have it be, no harm. But at the same time, when you look at the way that Ayuk has gone about it, his former college quarterback, he seems a little bit excited about the possibility of him ending up with Daniels at some point in his career. Now, 49ers general manager John Lynch sort of continued with the same sentiment that he has been preaching over the course of this offseason, that Ayuk is an extremely meaningful part of this organization, and their hope is that he remains with them for this season and that they can sort of smooth things out there. Didn't necessarily commit to any sort of a long-term deal. Feels like Ayuk is going to play out the final year of his contract, and they aren't going to be able to strike a deal this offseason. We'll see where that leads to next year. Maybe it's them giving him a big contract and them potentially cutting ties. It's interesting because they just have a lot of talented receivers, the 49ers do, between Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and they just drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round this past year. So you have to imagine at least one of them is gone headed into the 2025 season. But as for this year, I am fully confident that the 49ers are going to at least be able to get on the same page with Ayuk and have him be available for them throughout the course of this year. So that's enough on some of the holdout conversations. We do have some, more positive and encouraging stories as well, with a couple very important quarterbacks, starting with Aaron Rodgers, of course, of the New York Jets. He finally reports to training camp. He missed the mandatory, it was OTAs or whatever the official technical term with it was, but I think it was mandatory minicamp that he missed for his trip to Egypt. It seems like now that he's back in the building, he has no regrets about what he did, that he was in communication with his teammates and Robert Saleh throughout the course of it. But, as much as I thought it was a weird move, I haven't really talked about it on this show just yet. It was pretty strange for him to, at this point in his career, he understands that there only is a few years left, especially coming off of a torn Achilles. He has made more than enough money throughout the course of his career that he is going to be able to go on whatever trips he wants as things move on here. But the decision to go to Egypt, and look, he took full responsibility. He said he understood what was coming to him, and ultimately, as long as he performs on the football field, it's no big deal. But was definitely an interesting decision from him, and Rodgers has never been afraid to make interesting statements or do interesting things, so it's kind of all is normal to some degree for Aaron Rodgers there. But the other news that we got in regards to quarterbacks coming back from injuries is that Joe Burrow has been cleared to be a full participant at training camp. This isn't necessarily a massive surprise. We've known that this is likely going to be the case for some time, but it's still definitely encouraging for Bengals fans where, their entire season kind of relies on Joe Burrow. As soon as he went down with that injury last year, it was just about over. Now they were still able to win 9 games on the year, and they were at least competitive for a playoff spot by the end of it. But it was just so clear that, especially, and this year, we just talked about the Bengals earlier this week. I do think that their defense is going to be improved. They added some veterans into that secondary, which should be massively important because their defense just was not good enough last year. Their run game, there's still a lot to be desired there. Joe Burrow is sort of the heart of the Bengals, and everything does feel a lot smoother when he is in there and he is available. So ultimately, he will be there, and it should be, an improved season for the Bengals this year. And then the last training camp storyline I want to touch on is the quarterback battle for the Pittsburgh Steelers, where this is where we're going to get a little bit more insight into where that battle between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields stands. The Steelers went out and acquired both of them in the offseason. It was a free agent signing of Russell Wilson. It was a trade for Justin Fields. 2 quarterbacks that were starters last season, and there are a handful of doubts with both of them, but we also know that there is a lot of upside. Specifically Justin Fields, you feel like last year was the best season of his career, and that was maybe seeming like he could establish himself as a true starting quarterback. Russell Wilson, on the other hand, definitely on the decline, but at the same time, somebody who has won a Super Bowl, has been to another one, and is a veteran presence for this Steelers team that definitely needs it, because last year the quarterback play was just far too inconsistent between Kenny Pickett. Mitch Trubisky started a game or two as well in there, and ultimately Mason Rudolph was the one who took over down the stretch of the season into the playoffs. And you just, especially in this AFC, you cannot rely on somebody, no offense Mason Rudolph, but you can't win a playoff game. You can't come out of the AFC with that being your quarterback situation. So we are actually going to be diving deeper into the conversation surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers and what's going on with that training camp battle of Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. But first, we are going to be taking a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.